Today on Locked On Suns, it's draft week. Officially, it is here. We believe the Suns are keeping their pick. We'll talk plenty about prospects as the week goes along, but before the week really gets going, are we absolutely 100% sure that the Suns are actually going to be making a pick? And what could change that? Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we're back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Brendon Kleen, your host, and a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 7 seasons, as well as the host of the Just Basketball Show. Welcome in. Thank you for making us your first listen to kick off your Monday. We are free and available everywhere, including YouTube, so hit follow or subscribe if you have not already. Get a new episode of Locked On Suns in your feed every single Monday through Friday, or if it's like last week and there's a little bit of extra news, you got a Saturday episode as well. So keep it right here all off season long. Become an everydayer. Get locked onto the Phoenix Suns all summer. Summer League. Maybe there's an August trade like there has been for the past few years. I will have it all covered. All right, joining us as he does every single Monday is Brendon Dueñas. He is a writer over at Bright Side of the Sun, and we're going to try to rank the options here of what the Suns could do with this pick one last time before Wednesday. We'll do some last-minute homework on prospects as the week continues, but I don't want to lock in that the Suns are absolutely going to be making a pick here, Brandon. So we're going to talk through that. I want to let everybody know. First, today's show brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down. The sorts stop sporting like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with the booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to check it out. All right. This way, Brandon, to just open it all up. 4 options that the Suns could take with this number 22 overall pick. And I'm going to ask you which one you think is the best. Keep the pick, trade up, trade down, or trade out, meaning trade the pick for a player. Which one do you like the best?
First of all, I can't believe it's already draft time. Like, where has this year gone? Second, to answer your question,
I can't believe we're actually talking about the draft on Locked On Suns. Where has that time gone? It's been 4 years.
Exactly. So this is a tough question. But my quick answer is just, I think, trading back. I think you got to be hunting for assets at this point, and we'll cover some options later on in the show. But I think get another pick back or two, along with the player possibly. Like, I think that's probably the best way for them to do it. And there's so many teams with multiple picks in that range that makes sense as trade partners. So to me, if the stars align, I think that's the best way to do it.
I feel like I agree with you. But I will say, partially because of some of the players we're going to talk about later and just the opportunity that I feel like the Suns have in this range, I'm tempted to just say keep the pick. Because I feel like this draft is going to be a little bit crazy. And, obviously you're hearing kind of at the top of it, like not a lot of teams want to... there's more people wanting to trade back than trade up. I would imagine the same thing might be true in this draft. So one, what deals are out there? How far down are you having to go to find that trade partner? All that kind of stuff obviously is going to be there. But then I just think because everybody's been calling it kind of like an eye of the beholder draft and a weak draft and a, maybe a role player heavy versus star heavy draft, whatever way you want to kind of frame it with that, it feels like it's going to be even less predictable than it usually is. And so Obviously teams know a lot more than we do. So I'm not trying to say just because we think that it, but I guess I just don't know how certain can you be if you're moving back 5 spots, 10 spots, whatever. Maybe all the guys you like could be gone. So of course, if the deal is right, I would agree with you. But I guess in a vacuum, I'm kind of leaning just keep it and take a player you really like. And maybe it's just you walk out of draft night with one guy, but if that one guy is really good, then I'm in for it.
Yeah, and I think that could also, that same line of thinking as far as, which I agree with, is like this draft is going to be very unpredictable. There's going to be guys that drop that maybe we didn't expect to be there at 22. Let's say it's a guy that maybe the Suns aren't high on, and the New York Knicks, who sit, they have the 24th, 25th, and 38th picks. Let's say there's someone they really like there that they didn't expect to be there. Could the Suns get the 25th and the 38th pick? Like, to me, that's where you could not only add someone in the first round, like if you want to use that pick still, but then now all of a sudden you have a second rounder, or you could move that first rounder for a different player and then take a swing in the second round. So to me, it's just all about collecting assets. The Suns don't have a lot of those at this point, so I think the best case scenario is someone drops that the Suns maybe aren't as high on, and then one of those teams that has, like, I think Utah has like 29 and 32, Minnesota has 27 and 37. Those are a couple other examples of teams that maybe if there's someone they really like and they have all these picks that they're probably not going to use these spots on, like it would make sense to partner with a team like the Suns who could use those picks now or later. So to me, like, obviously I agree if there's someone that is very high on their list that falls in their lap, take them. But it's interesting spot.
It really comes down to how big of a gap there is for the Suns between a lot of the guys in this range. And like, to their credit, this summer, part of why I think we're all kind of leaning toward they're going to at least make a pick, one pick at least somewhere, is that they've been doing a lot more homework, it feels like, than they have in recent years, where they weren't even really working guys out. They weren't really like involved much because, one, I mean, last year they didn't even have a pick, and it's just kind of been assumed that, okay, there's no point, but they didn't go into this process feeling like they weren't making a pick, and more time goes by, you're just going to buy it. But if they like Tyler Kolek or some of these other guys that they've worked out, what's the gap between somebody like Kolek versus whatever the next guy? Or maybe he's not even first. Maybe Gambo's been saying that the hype on him and the Suns being tied together is a little bit less than the national media is saying. So maybe it's one of the guys we'll talk about later on in the show, or maybe it's somebody we've never heard of. But whatever that player is, do they like that guy twice as much as the next guy that they might get at 22, or are they all interchangeable? And I think that would lend itself to, trade back, because if they're all the same grade, then you're happy with any of them. But if they love one guy, then I think that kind of goes toward keep 22.
Yeah, and just another idea, I'm just kind of spitballing here, is like just looking back to 2019 when they took Cam Johnson. I think the philosophy of, like, yes, we're very high on Cam Johnson. We're going to reach for him. We're not going to take him at 6, so we're going to trade back to 11. It's still a reach, but he's our guy, and we're going to get Dario Saric in the process. If Toronto, I'm just throwing a team out there, if Toronto, they have the 31st pick, if there's someone they like, the Suns want Kelly Olynyk or some vet to attach to that, and then trade back to 31 where you're getting a rotation player while also still getting to take that swing of the guy that maybe the Suns are going to take at that same pick. Like, to me, that's what they should be looking for. Like, I think that was one of the best moves James Jones has ever made, and it was one of the most scrutinized ones at the time. So if they could try to find a way to replicate that, of gaining a rotation player while also taking who they're going to take anyways, that to me is awesome. And then do whatever you want with 2031. Like, we've already talked about it. I think that pick's gone. Pour some out for it. I think it's long gone. I don't know if it's exactly what the trade's going to look like, but I think this year they can get a little creative, so I'm excited to see what they do.
All right, so neither of us picked trade the pick for a player, trade out of the draft completely. So what I want to ask in the next segment is, how good would the offer have to be, which really means how good would the player coming in have to be to flip your opinion and make you okay doing a trade out deal, and same for me. We'll also talk a little bit about these lingering rumors about the Suns trying to trade in to get a second pick, not down, but a whole other deal entirely to get back into the second round, and what that could mean. All coming up next. First, today's show brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. We all know the Arizona sun just fries our cars, so we need a little bit of different stuff than some places would, but eBay Motors has it all. Roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, batteries galore. I'm sure eBay can help you out there. Anything exterior paint-wise, any little patches, things like that, or rust, or deteriorating anything, the heat does it. eBay Motors has you covered. With the over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you always find exactly what you are looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, Brandon. So I will let you answer the question that I posed in that last segment. Very straightforward. I made back in April, May, and I kept it in my planning doc for a reason so that I could hold myself to the same original ideas that I had. Obviously, others have kind of come up as different players maybe become available or the playoffs changed how teams feel about their guys, whatever. But I got like 30 names between Nurkic and Lil trades. Some of them would be good enough to convince me that trading the pick is worth it. Now, they might not be available, but what do you think? How good would the player have to be? Who comes to mind? Not Landry Shamet might be a good place to start the answer here, but what would it have to look like for you to change your answer from trade back to trade out and get a vet?
Yeah, to me, part of the reason my answer leans towards keeping the pay, or like either keeping it or trading back, is the fact that I don't think there's going to be a player that fits, that checks the box of like being good enough that's actually available to make it happen. So obviously if that happens, like pull the trigger. Walker Kessler is a name I thought was a little interesting. Like, I don't know how, like there's a little bit of smoke there. I'm not sure how willing Utah is to actually deal him, but that's a name that I think you could plug that guy in and he could play right away. To me, it has to be someone of that level that you're going to get at least 20 to 25 minutes of this person in a playoff setting. That's the bottom line. Like that's where you have to start. So how many of those players are going to get for the 22nd pick? Probably not too many, and you have to look at the teams that would be willing to do that, and it's typically going to be those bad teams that are either rebuilding and just want to collect picks, collect assets, like whatever. So there just aren't too many teams, I think, that are a perfect fit that are likely. So that's why someone like Kessler kind of checks the box of A, he's still young, B, he could play right now, C, I don't know why Utah would deal him other than just to collect more picks, but that's just kind of like the first name I start with. There's obviously like the Charlotte connection that people have talked about, like Cody Martin and Nick Richards and all that, but I don't know.
Well, that's a good one, right? Like I know you've been big on Nick Richards all summer. Is he good enough? It would be little in that case, and 22 for Nick Richards. Is that a good enough deal for you to trade it?
I think that's, to me, like that would be passable. I would. It wouldn't be. It also depends who's available at 22. I think that's kind of the other part you have to factor in. But to me, like
what's crazy,
that's the floor.
right? Like that you say that, because what was so kind of wild about the Landry Shamet thing, just because that's like a one-to-one example of exactly the type of trade that we're talking about, is they did that before the draft. They didn't even wait for the draft to start. It was like the afternoon, like hours beforehand. It's like, at least wait and see how the board falls. Like, what if somebody great ends up becoming available that you loved? It just speaks to what I was saying a minute ago too, of like, I feel like they went into 2021 being like, we're not taking anybody. Whatever. Yeah.
You got to use the board as leverage. Like that's one of the most important things you could do on draft day, is like that's when that day is like when the pick holds the most value. Obviously, you're not guaranteed to get a deal done and in time, and sometimes people can get cold feet or whatever. But like it seemed like they just had their mind made up that they wanted Shamet, so they just went out and did it. There could be something similar that happens on Wednesday afternoon before the draft, where the Suns are like, by the time before the draft even starts, we get a little Woj bomb and that pick's gone as well. So I don't know. Like I think Richards and Martin's probably like the baseline for me of like what you're looking for if you're going to move that. And there just aren't too many other options I feel like that are super realistic. So it's, to me, that's why I think trading back makes the most sense. And then you could still use, and when I say trade back, it doesn't mean like use both picks, draft 2 rookies. Like, no, I think you could get creative and package them together, package one, make a pick, and utilize that G League a little bit. Like, there's just, I don't know, there's a lot of things they could do. So to me, that's the one that still I would put out in the front by quite a bit at this point.
I believe that Utah they have 29 and 32. They have exactly, I feel like that's pretty close to what Indiana had last year when Denver did the deal with them. And they also have Kessler. So they've just been a team that I'm like, keep an eye on. It feels like the Jazz do weird stuff. They're trying to rebuild without bottoming out. It's not going great. It's like, okay, hold on. They're in on Damian Lillard. They're in on Drew Holiday, but also they're, in the lottery every year, and they're acquiring all these first-round picks. Like, they just feel like kind of a wild card. I agree, like the Kessler thing, I don't really know why they would deal him, but there have been some rumors out there of it's like, disjointed between him and the coaching staff. He basically got benched for John Collins last year, which I'd be pretty bothered by if I was like a really promising rookie who gets sent to the bench for a guy that's like had been on the trade rumor mill for like 3 years in Atlanta, and now all of a sudden he's taken my spot. So I kind of get it. And if it is that bad and he's available, he's absolutely good enough. But let me throw another one at you that's also on the Jazz. So this would not be Nasir Little. This would be Yusuf Nurkic. Again, I think a little less likely just because, to me, the caliber of player that you're getting with the 22nd overall pick this year is a little lower, meaning a little cheaper, most likely. Somebody that's not a star or not a player who's already been properly paid, whereas Nurkic always made more sense with 2031 because more expensive guys tend to be vets, tend to be more valuable, etc. Just to walk through my thinking there. But this would be a Nurkic and 22. And tell me if this is good enough that would make you want to pull the trigger. Colin Sexton.
No. I would not. Nothing against Sexton. I just and I'm not a huge Nurkic guy either, as you all know. But to me, that's just from a roster building standpoint. Like that's not where I would allocate. Yeah, that's not where I'd allocate that repositioning of the roster and everything. Like, I think Nurkic has to be moved. I'm not gonna say it has to be moved for a big, but I would not move him for a guard personally. I just think they need size.
That's
somehow.
Tough though, because there's just not a lot of centers who already make as much as he makes who would be available.
Exactly.
It's like Zach Collins, Mitchell Robinson, somebody that of course has come up a lot.
Yeah, that's a team I'm really looking at. Is the Knicks. I could really see the Suns and Knicks doing something. I'm not saying it's gonna be Mitch, Rob, and Nurk, but like, just with their picks, they have, like I said, they have 24, 25, and 38. Like that's a team I could easily see trading because they already have a deep team. So if there's someone they like, and that falls to the 22, and the Suns want to gain another asset, and I don't think they would get 24 and 38. I feel like the Knicks would probably be a little, tough on that negotiation and say like, no, we'll send you 25 and 38. But to me, like I would pull the trigger on that almost immediately. Like bearing there being someone that is very high on the Suns list that slipped down to them. So
real quick on the Knicks, also just to register this so I can say I got it right if it happens. Wouldn't be like shocked if Paul George was a Knick by draft night and those picks are in a different team. You keep hearing the Knicks from people who seem to know. Brian Windhorst, Mark Stein, like all of us are just kind of like, whoa, the Sixers, what would be so crazy if we went to the Magic? But a lot of the plugged-in people keep bringing up the Knicks, despite the fact that they have a lot of Paul George-type guys already. So for whatever that's worth. The last thing, though, just part of why, again, I would lean a little bit toward keep the pick than any of these other things is, even if they can find a team in the 30s or low 40s that makes sense as a partner, it feels like if they get that second round pick, they're just going to take Bronny. And so that kind of impacts to me how highly I'm valuing it if it's going to be a guy that they're reaching for anyway, and not somebody that I think is going to make a big difference on this year's team. It's like, yes, that's a nice trade. They'll get hyped up by like the cap nerds and the front office nerds out there that cover the NBA, but will it actually make them closer to a championship team if that's the direction they end up going? Obviously, that's like 5 layers of hypotheticals deep at that point, so I don't know it, but it feels like if they get another second-round pick, whether from trading back or trading into the second round, like I mentioned, that's just going to become Bronny.
Yeah, it's a good point. And again, though, I think and it's already been squashed. I get all that, and I get that all these quotes that are out there, like, oh, it doesn't matter if the Lakers draft him, I could still leave. All this back and forth. Like, to me, I think LeBron he wants to play with Bronny. I still believe that. I'm not saying if the Suns take him, he's going to force his way here and play on a minimum, but I still think that is still something that I will say it's the unpopular opinion now. Like, it's been squashed. I get it. And of course, the agent's going to say that his client's not going to take a pay cut. Like, I get it, but his clock is ticking. He's only going to be playing so much longer. I think I could see something happening if the Suns did take Bronny and the Lakers pass on him. I'm going to keep my guns there and say that despite everything everyone's saying the complete opposite, I would just keep an eye on that.
LeBron's opt-out date is Saturday. He could have opted out and re-signed with the Lakers. So, just to be giving the facts here. But I will believe that when I see it. I would love the idea, though, of trading back and the ultimate deal basically becoming like with the Knicks, let's just say, since you use that example. Phoenix trades 22 to New York for 25 and LeBron James, which is pretty much what you're kind of saying would be happening. That would be a win of a trade, I would say, if it ended up that way. Trade down and get the potential GOAT. That sounds pretty nice. All right, let's close with less trade talk and more prospect talk, because there's one other wrinkle that, again, I just want to kind of make sure we're all on the same page on, which is that we've assumed the Suns are going to take somebody older, somebody ready to contribute right away. One, I don't know if that's always one and the same. I don't know if old guys are the only ones who can contribute right away, so we'll flesh that out. But also, what if they just take a project and surprise us all? We'll get into that coming up next. First, today's show brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. I love sports so much, we never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down across basketball and hockey, we get fewer games. There's not as much on TV. I'm already full in soccer mode, for instance, and the sports aren't quite getting there like we want them to. But FanDuel lets us keep the sports going whenever we want. All you got to do is open the app, dream up bets anytime you're in the mood, and it feels just like normal. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everybody, every day, all summer long. I'm looking at WNBA Tuesday, Commissioner's Cup championship game. The New York Liberty are not really at home because the NBA draft, I guess, had to slide in there, but they are in New York, and they're 4.5-point favorites at home. They won this thing last year. Maybe you just take that. But also, of course, over-under 157.5. I just watched the Liberty in Phoenix lay like 90 points. If they score 90, you're probably going to hit the over on 157.5. So just something to look at, but there's also baseball, hockey. We got one more game on Monday. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, Brandon. So we have 3 prospects we're going to kick through here. Fairly rapid fire. I watched other people's breakdowns. I watched highlights. I read Sam Vecini does really good stuff in The Athletic on like the background of these dudes. So the names are, and they're the 3 most project-y players I think that we've heard the Suns get connected with, at least of the freshman variety. And, well, one of them is somebody we haven't heard the Suns get connected with, but could fall. We talked about all these players falling. I look at the latest mock draft from Sam Vecini, for instance, and there's a ton of guys I like who could be available at 22, and all of them are going to be on our list right now. Okay, so the 3 players are Tyler Smith, Isaiah Collier, Yves Missy, from Baylor. Tell me who you want to start with and give me your thoughts on that guy. Give me the one you like the most of the group. We'll start there.
I think Missy probably makes the most sense for several. Like, obviously, let's rewind here. The Suns should not be. We'll start with this, just in general draft analysis. This is not a player that they should be relying on or expect to be relied on come playoff time this season. Like, they could have their moments, I think, like any rookie, but this is someone.
Do you think that no matter who they take, or do you think that in this conversation about more raw guys?
No matter who they take. Now, I get the idea. I think there are players that could potentially like break through that barrier at 22 and become like someone that they could rely on for 5 to 10 minutes in the playoffs, but it's not someone that they should be drafting for this year. I think that's where a lot of mistakes are made. I think it has to be someone that they think could potentially contribute this year and show some flashes and is ready to play this year, but also has a little bit of upside. And that's why I think someone like Missy, he can kind of fill that Clint Capella type role in terms of he does two things that the Suns need. He could probably do them right away, maybe not at the highest level, and like there's going to be some obviously like growing pains any rookie would have. But in this group, I think he's the best of both worlds in terms of you could probably play him a little bit in high leverage situations and it won't kill you, hopefully. But also like long term, he could be a center that makes sense with Devin Booker, who I'm kind of looking at as like probably the staple of the Suns in terms of whoever they draft is probably going to be playing with Devin Booker for a long time. I don't know about Durant or Beal, but to me, he's the type of center that I think could potentially be a long-term starter if he hits the ceiling. So that's where I look at trying to find that balance between both worlds.
He's the one I like the most too. Made 62% of his free throws, so like that helps you feel decent about his playability, if you want to call it that. Offensive rebounding rate was really nice. Block rate was really nice. The things that I liked about him, kind of above and beyond the basic skill set, is he has amazing hands. Like,
he's coordinated.
Forget the DeAndre Ayton years. Like, he's going to catch passes consistently, and that's good. The other thing is, I don't think this, this isn't me saying this is where his game is going or it's for sure thing, but there were times that he would catch the ball, at the free throw line, maybe in the middle of a zone, or kind of just in a dribble handoff situation where he has to make a decision, and he could take a dribble or two and get to the basket. Now, I don't think he's going to be Nikola Jokic out there, but the idea that maybe that could develop into kind of not maybe short roll passing, but those Amari Stoudemire style short roll dunks, where you're too far from the basket to necessarily dunk it immediately, but you can at least get there and power through other players. That felt pretty good as far as not just being a guy that is a garbage collector around the basket and needs everything set up for him. There's people who think he can maybe be a good switch defender, so he does feel like he threads the needle a little bit where, yes, he's a freshman, yes, he's maybe a little bit more raw in the big picture, but I still think could play minutes. So
yeah. People said the same thing about Lively. Like, I mean, obviously, everyone's looking for the next Lively. That's going to be an example we were going to hear over and over. But, like, I think there's some similarities in terms of, like, long-term outlook, short-term. Like, he's the best. Of this specific group, I think makes the most sense for the Suns given their current situation.
The other thing is Gambo said that he will be in consideration. I don't fully always know what the Gambo 5 thing is. Is it like players he knows the Suns are interested in or just players he hasn't ruled out? I don't fully know. I don't think they've worked him out, Missy, so we'll see. But Gambo also has not said anything about Khalil Ware. That's kind of the one big he had besides that's the one that he hasn't mentioned really here, and there's more to come on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, so we're not going to talk about him today, but he could be there. Missy's also over 19 already, so I think that kind of speaks to it. He's not 18 turning 19 in November or something. Like, he'll turn 20 next season. That's not exactly some kind of raw freshman type prospect. All right, I'll start us off on the next one, which is Isaiah Collier. So he no connections to the Suns as far as we know. Not a historically James Jones type of prospect in any way, shape, or form. A point guard who is a little, flashy, athletic, can't really shoot, didn't perform great in college, only played one season. His stock fell from where it started. Like, this is nothing like any player the Suns would have ever taken before. But it seems like, this is a guy who has had top 5 consideration. Some of the nerdy draft people I follow on Twitter still see him as one of the most talented, best bets in the draft, but is in all these mocks falling into the 20s, even late 20s. And to me, it just feels like, to say that, like, okay, the jumper is kind of the question mark, that's the case for a lot of guys, but his was at 33%. The turnovers are a little high. Well, we're all making kind of this questionable case with Bronny of like, well, the environment wasn't great for him. That's what Rich Paul has said. Well, Isaiah Collier played for the same team. Their environments were the same. It wasn't ideal for him either, and still had more assists than turnovers. It wasn't some kind of black hole. So I don't know. I don't think he's, if I'm picking 5th, I'm not going to go crazy. But if he fell to 22, this kind of is where the conversation we were just having comes into play, I think, Brandon, where it's like, I don't think this is a guy the Suns could rely on at all this season. Like, none. But there might be a situation where the value is just too good to pass up, and he is a position of need, like obviously we've been talking about all summer. So I don't think they're going to take him, but it wouldn't be crazy if they did.
Yeah, this is where it goes a little full circle to like the beginning of the show. Is like, this is the type of player that I don't think the Suns are going to draft him. He's just not the James Jones type. But if there's a team that sees him dropping and wants to trade up for him, he's the perfect type of guy to sell on, I guess you could say, is like if he's there. But from a Suns point of view, just I think he's a couple of years away. Definitely talented. It was like one of the top high school prospects entering this class and had a very disappointing season, as you mentioned. There's some skill there, but to me, it's just like there's too many pieces of his game he's still trying to figure out, and I don't see him contributing anytime soon to a contender. So he definitely has a talent, and he could wind up being a very good player, and especially in the 20s, that's a value in this draft that I think is worth taking for a team that's maybe looking to find a home run. But it's just not how the Suns operate. So that's why I actually had him 3rd. I had Smith above him as far as fits that make the most sense for the Suns and like most realistic. And while I think Smith is still kind of a little bit of a long shot, I think I could see him being that similar like Kamara type of Jones pick, where a little bit different, a little bit younger and less proven, I guess, but a little more parallels for him than there is for Collier.
Yeah, Tyler Smith is 19, spent a couple of years at OTE, and then went to Ignite, so just jumping around all the new pathways, basically, but can just shoot it, and made 36% of his threes on an awful Ignite team that literally folded after the season. That's kind of all he does right now, which is the weird part. And so but we know that Jones values that. I also just want to say, as a side note, I'm not really positive how much James Jones is like in full control anymore. I'm not saying he's not. That's not reporting. I don't report anything, but it's just speculation. The whole front office has changed over. He has a lot of pressure on him. We all thought he might get fired this summer. He didn't, but everybody around him did, basically. So maybe that's kind of why I'm at least willing to like think about. And some of the guys we've seen, like, they worked Smith out. I should have mentioned that. They worked Tyler Smith out as far as we know. Ryan Dunn, another guy we're not going to talk about today, but he's very, very raw. He's awesome at defense, nothing on offense. They worked him out. Not a player we would think they would take normally. So just to kind of tuck that away. But Smith basically is, he would be right back in the G League next year, I think. He'd be playing in Tempe because he needs to fill out his game, his body. He's kind of like, to me, reminds me of Jabari Smith, not just because they share the same last name, but very much in a way of a wing who happens to be really tall, more so than a forward, And he needs to kind of figure out what his position's going to be in the NBA and what his skill set's going to be. But again, I like him, and they did work him out. I wouldn't pan the pick, but he's not helping them win a championship in 2025.
Yeah, and he's the type of player, too, just with his size and ability to shoot, that I could actually see making some sort of impact faster than you might think. It's not going to be right away, obviously, like you've mentioned. I think he'll definitely have to spend some time in the G League, or I think maybe a second-year contributor off the bench where he slowly gets integrated. But again, goes circles back to like, what are they trying to get out of this pick? We don't know. We don't know if it's going to be a James Jones type, and if it is, good luck guessing it. So it's going to be one of the most unpredictable drafts from the general NBA perspective, but also the Suns because of the new ownership and all the little subplots that we're not really sure who's pulling the strings and like what they're trying to get out of this draft. So Smith is someone that I think like I could see him being the pick if that's the route they want to go. If they want to add some more athleticism and some size at the forward position, that's hard to find. But again, it still kind of feels like a little bit of a stretch given some of the comments that the front office and ownership made following the season, talking about they're trying to win a championship now. So to me, I still think they're going to make a competitive move, and that's why I think it's going to be either drafting an older player that they think can contribute right away, or trading back and trying to pull off the Dario Saric, Aaron Baines, Cam Johnson type of offseason where they kill two birds with one stone. And Ty Jerome. Sorry, Ty.
It's all right. Yeah, he made the playoffs last year with Cleveland, so got one last little hurrah. Yeah, I love, it's been 4 or 5 years since it mattered from a Sun standpoint, but I still love the draft. I feel like Wednesday's going to be insane. I feel like a lot of different stuff could happen. I think a lot of teams are wanting to move. Maybe it ends up that it's just so everybody wants to do the same thing that nothing ends up happening. It could go that way, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I do expect the Suns to have at least one new rookie on their roster by the end of the night. So maybe we got to the bottom of things, or maybe we just confused ourselves more, but wanted to flesh out some of the less likely things here on the fringes as we make our way toward the draft. We'll have Zach Cohen on Tuesday of Real GM, also local and Suns fans. So talk through some of the prospects and get ready. So hit follow or subscribe if you haven't already. Get that episode in your feed. Recap, of course, on Wednesday night. Thursday night when Bronny James becomes a Sun. We'll talk about that as well, of course. I'm somewhat joking. And we'll close out the week with a free agency preview because that starts Sunday. So Locked On Suns is where you're going to want to be all week. I will talk to you guys tomorrow.